There was a certain rich man who was clothed in purple and fine linen and fared sumptuously every day. The extreme costliness of purple dye was well known in antiquity. We're told that the dye was taken from a particular fish, but only a few drops could be extracted from each one. Purple became known as the royal color, probably because royals were among the few who could afford it. A Babylonian king Belshazzar declared, you may remember, that whoever would read and interpret the strange writing which appeared on his wall would be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around his neck. Now this rich man of whom Jesus spoke was clothed in purple and fine linen. Historian Pliny tells of a fine linen which was ascribed such value that it was exchanged for its weight in gold. This rich man, we read, fared sumptuously every day. That is, he ate the finest food, and he ate plenty of it. It is, of course, not a sin to be wealthy. Abraham was a wealthy man. Job was a wealthy man. Solomon was extremely wealthy, as you know. But it is a sin to be selfish, and it is a sin to be unmerciful. And that is what is exposed in the heart of this rich man in the next two verses. Verse 20, but there was a certain beggar named Lazarus, full of sores, who was laid at his gate, desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. This beggar presents a stark contrast. We read that he was full of sores. He was laid at the rich man's gate by well-meaning family or friends, we must assume, in the hope that he might receive some charity from those passing by, or perhaps from the rich man himself. The beggar was so famished that he would have been happy to receive a few crumbs that fell from the rich man's table. But it appears that the closest thing to concern he received was the licking from the dogs that walked in the streets, or perhaps lived within the gate. Clearly, Jesus was making the point here that it was within the power of the wealthy man to relieve Lazarus' distress, to have his servants bring him some food, to tend his sores, or invite him into his home. But he did nothing. He did nothing. Whoever has this world's goods and sees his brother in need and shuts up his heart from him, how does the love of God abide in him? 1 John 3:17. Note, Lazarus, the beggar, was a believer, as the following verses show. A believer, by the way, who was poor and afflicted. Presumably, he hadn't heard the modern teaching that God's plan for his children is that they should all be healthy and wealthy in this life. But of course, even if he had heard it, it wouldn't have changed his status. Has not God chosen the poor of this world rich in faith? James 2:5. Clearly, this story of Jesus affirms that a man's wealth here is no indication of God's favor. And a man's poverty here is no indication of God's disfavor. Now, you may have very little of this world's goods. You may be tempted to think, well, the Lord must be displeased with me. Nothing seems to be going right in my life. The Lord must be displeased with me. Listen, Lazarus was lame. He couldn't walk. He was full of sores. He was dependent upon other people just to carry his little pallet and put him at the rich man's gate. I don't think anybody here is in that condition. You may have very little of this world's wealth. But Lazarus was blessed by God. The rich man wore purple and fine linen. He ate sumptuous meals every day, and the Lord was displeased with him. Your fine clothes and fine cars, your fine home and fine food are not necessarily indications that all is fine between you and your Maker. They were not fine with the rich man in our story. Paul told Timothy to command those who are rich in this present age not to be haughty, nor to trust in uncertain riches, but rather to do good and be rich in good works, ready to give, willing to share, storing up a good foundation for the time to come. Are you doing that? You'll note that it's interesting that the beggar in Jesus' story is named and the rich man is not. Now, if this story is an account of an actual incident known to the Lord Jesus, surely the rich man would have been widely known in the town. Probably had streets named after him. Whereas Lazarus would have been commonly known as, well, that beggar, you know, the beggar, the one with all the sores, the lame one, the one who's always there at the gate of so-and-so's house. But the Lord Jesus names the beggar, not the rich man. How different is God's standard of judgment from the world's? As one commentator put it, Christ is reading Lazarus' name from the Lamb's Book of Life.